Polls on the mainland close in less than an hour. The latest live from Isabel Rosales on Capitol Hill.
President Biden is not on the ballot, but his agenda is certainly at stake. The midterms, a sort of report card. Voters are going to get the chance here to vote on the president, the work he's doing, his policies, and his party. Voters making their voices heard by the tens of millions. Polls nearing their final hours across the country. Top of mind?
The economy is definitely a big one.
What's really important to me is basic human rights and how our government is protecting them.
Candidates themselves hitting the polls and greeting voters. The stakes couldn't be higher for both parties.
Whenever you look at the Senate, I agree it's going to be close. Everybody has to get out and vote and participate this election cycle because the importance of it.
My goodness, 2022 is perhaps the most important election of our lifetimes.
Republicans just 5 seats away from a House majority. And it may come down to a handful of battleground states to decide the future of the Senate. The GOP just 1 seat away from flipping control. And the potential next House Speaker already laying out next steps.
I think the first thing you'll see is a bill to control the border. First thing we're going to do is make sure an economy that's strong.
Looming in the background, contentious court fights with more than 100 lawsuits filed pre-election, many in battleground states. Yeah, and it's important to note that the term election night by itself, it's a bit misleading. It suggests that once a night is over, the results are in, and that is certainly not the case. It's better to think of an election week or an election month. There's just so many nuances depending on the state laws, even down to the counties, when the polls close, when those absentee mail-in votes get counted. All of this creates a complexity that will push when we determine the winners well beyond today. Live from Capitol Hill, I'm Isabel Rosales.
Of course, here in the islands, you still have time to vote, even register. Our Casey Lund is out at Kapolei Hale with more on that. Casey, before we get to that, you've been out since the early morning hours. Did you see any last-minute voters out there?
Oh, man, Jonathan, we saw a lot of last-minute voters, and primarily it was folks that were on their way to work. So I get here at 4 a.m. Of course, we did coverage on sunrise, and even that early, I think between the hours of 4 and 5, I saw something like, 10 to 20 people put those ballots in the official drop box. I actually want to play a little sound from one gentleman I spoke to early this morning who says his years of service in the military are a good reminder of why it's important to make sure your voice is heard.
I vote every election, so I've spent 26 years in the military, and it's the way I was raised. It's our right and it's our duty.
So that was somebody who was able to take their mail-in ballot and put it in one of those drop boxes. Of course, we have all that information online at HawaiiNewsNow.com. But if you say didn't get your mail-in ballot in the mail, or you're not sure if you're even registered, you can still do that today. Like Jonathan said, you can do that up until 7 p.m. on election day today. So there's no excuse not to. You can go to elections.hawaii.gov or HawaiiNewsNow.com. You can register online. That will save you some time when you go to voter service centers. Now, if you do have to do that, make sure you give yourself plenty of time, because whether you're on the Big Island or Maui or even here on Oahu, there's generally only 2 or 1, and so you may have to travel. So factor that time in if you do still need to vote in person.
So, Casey, you've been covering election 2022 for several days now, I would say even weeks now. Are you still finding that people out there have concerns about voting procedures? I know you've talked to a number of people and state officials.
Yeah, that's right, Jonathan. Even out here, earlier this morning when we were out here, I talked to some of the folks that say they don't necessarily distrust our state's mail-in system or the elections offices in general. They just feel comfortable doing it the old-fashioned way, voting in person. But yes, with so much national attention and scrutiny on our elections, there are folks that still don't trust mail-in voting. So last week, I was able to tag along with elections officials as well as, and this is important, election observers. Those are the folks, volunteers, that choose to do this in their spare time. They're community members from different parties, the Democrats, Republicans, Independent, the Green Party, and then other community organizations that watch very carefully as ballots move from the U.S. Postal Service to the county elections offices where those signatures are verified and then eventually transported to the state. I was at the state capitol. We watched that rented U-Haul truck come in, and we watched election observers in their own vehicles following behind and making sure that that truck didn't make any stops and there was no serious issues. So I feel confident, and I think most of our viewers should, that our elections are secure. As a matter of fact, I asked Scott Nago, he's the state's chief elections officer, how he feels when people still question the work that the state of Hawaii does when it comes to elections.
We send official observers there to watch the process, so they're following the truck to make sure that that truck is going from point A to point B and not making any stops. It's also important to note that when the ballots are in that truck, it's sealed in a cage with a uniquely numbered wire hash seal, so if anybody were to tamper it, we would know.
I mean, I have been here following the process from the county to, I mean, it would be really difficult, and I talked to a lot of these observers. They take their job very seriously.
Oh, definitely. A lot of them have been doing this for a long time. It's their integrity. Everybody's working hard. Everybody's trying to get the results out, and you know, to say that something's not going on, you're also insulting them as well as our office.
Back out here at Kapolei Hale, you know, we, as I mentioned, had a very long line earlier this morning, but that cleared out pretty quickly, and that is a good sign, a good indicator that things are running smoothly at our voter service centers. Not hearing of any major issues just yet. Of course, there's still plenty of time left in the day. A final reminder, you have until 7. Get in that line and make sure your voice is heard. Jonathan?
Well, Casey, one last question. You hear so much about divisiveness and this political hot climate and those tensions that we hear, especially on the mainland. I'm looking behind you. I'm seeing some smiling faces back there from time to time. I remember as a child, my grandmother was an election poll worker. Now you're at the voter service centers. But I'm just wondering, what's the vibe there?
Oh, friendly. You know, there have been a couple of vocal people, you know, saying a few things about who they want to see win in this election. Of course, we are on the west side, and so people out here very friendly, but also believe in what they believe in very strongly. But there haven't been any issues, no arguments, no disputes that I've seen anyway. So it's been a friendly vibe. And it's funny you mentioned your grandma. I talked to some of those election observers, volunteers. A lot of them are senior citizens, and it was cool to listen to them talk about why it's so important not only to vote, but to show the work that they do and to show the work that our election officials are doing during this general election. It's very important, and those people, whether they are on the red or blue side or in between, they feel that they have a duty to keep an eye on things and a duty to vote. Jonathan?
All right, Casey Lund, thank you so much. We'll check back in with you throughout the week, I'm sure, regarding election 2022.
Joining us now to talk more about today's election is our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Peter Zampa. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's jump right into this. Political violence is making headlines across the country. What security measures is D.C. taking to stay safe today?
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Dylan. Yeah, D.C. actually today is a lot quieter than it usually is because Capitol Hill is not terribly occupied. Most of them are out with you folks in Hawaii or elsewhere across the country celebrating election night with their constituents. But I did still ask the Capitol Police what their plan is right now because of all of this violence we've been seeing against lawmakers. You know, at Speaker Pelosi's house in San Francisco, Ted Cruz had a beer thrown at him yesterday or the day before. And they said their men and women are working around the clock. They're really taking this urgent mission, they call it, seriously. And it all comes down to political divisiveness. And they say the best thing that we can all do is kind of tone down this rhetoric, and that'll keep people safer.
Most definitely. There are a lot of hot races across the nation tonight. What is the White House saying about today's midterm elections?
Yeah, well, the White House is trying to be optimistic in their rallies over the past few days and weeks. You've heard them try to act like, you know, things could go their way, even though historically speaking, things do not go the White House's way during midterm elections. It's really usually a referendum on the current president. That happens to be a Democrat this time, Joe Biden. So his party is bracing for a blow, especially in the House of Representatives and potentially in the Senate. But the president's trying to make a stark contrast between the two parties. He's trying to tout Democratic accomplishments like the the infrastructure bill, climate and social spending, and also saying that abortion rights are up for grabs here now. Saying if Democrats keep control of both chambers, they could codify abortion rights in this country, and if Republicans take it over, there could be a federal ban. They're trying to say there could be social programs that are cut if Republicans take control. So the president really trying to draw that contrast, trying to convince voters that the Democrats are the way to go today.
And there has been a lot of talk about this red wave sweeping over the nation, as you kind of mentioned right there. Tell us a little bit more about what D.C. will look like if Republicans flip the House and the Senate, and just how difficult it will be for President Biden to get anything done.
Yeah, Dylan, that's the question on everyone's mind, is what will next year look like in the years to come? And frankly, there could be plenty of gridlock. There could be a Republican Congress that is obstructionist, that does not want to get any of the Biden agenda passed, which is their right if they're in power. They can do whatever they want. On the other end of that coin, the president doesn't have to sign any of their legislation. So most folks would hope this is an opportunity for bipartisanship, to say the executive is one party, the legislative is another party. Let's work together. That's how it's supposed to work. Another philosophy here could be that it gets ugly, that Republicans spend their time using their committee chairmanship to call all of these hearings that they've been sort of promising to question things like the COVID response, to question things like how immigration is working in this country, and maybe even some of Biden's family members. So we'll have to see if it's the bipartisan way or the ugly partisan way that we've come to know in the past few years.
A lot to watch on the national level. Peter Zampa joining us from D.C. Thank you so much for your time.
Continuing our team coverage now by taking you over to the Valley Isle, where election officials are trying to avoid the problems they saw in the primary. Chelsea Davis reports.
More signage and more crowd control measures are up at the Voter Service Center in Wailuku.
We're seeing a robust increase in visitors, and our kupuna are out in full force.
During the primary in August, a line snaked around the Velma McQueen Santos Community Center. Election officials hope to be better prepared this time. At last check on Saturday, almost 27,000 voters had cast their ballots. The county clerk expects that number to surpass 30,000 by the end of the day. The race for mayor is expected to be a tight one. Incumbent Michael Victorino is up against a tough challenger, retired Judge Richard Bisson.
In Maui, we have some interesting situations because incumbents have not always won.
Traditionally, it's difficult to beat a sitting mayor.
Incumbents have real advantages. One is they have name recognition. They see it in the newspaper, see headlines, stories about the person. So they have a lot of name recognition that goes out there.
But turns out Maui politics are not so traditional. Out of Maui's past 4 mayors, only one was re-elected.
We've had now 3 cases. Kimo Apana, Charmaine Tavares, Alan Arakawa, all of whom lost after one term. So in the turn of the century, only 1 out of the 4 candidates who've been mayor have actually managed to get a second term.
Bisson beat out Victorino in the primary, but there's no telling what will happen tomorrow. Chelsea Davis, Hawaii News Now.
Hawaii News Now is your election 2022 headquarters. We'll be bringing you the latest breaking election news and updates all afternoon long. This special live stream is going to continue all the way till 4 p.m. You can also catch our breaking news coverage on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. At 4 p.m., our election night coverage gets underway. Watch first at 4 on KGMB, KHNL, and K5, and of course on those HNN digital platforms. That stream is going to continue all the way until 10:30 tonight. But some other programming notes. Hawaii News Now at 5 will be on KGMB, KHNL, and K5 today. The 6 o'clock show will be on KGMB and K5. And then from 7 to 9, special coverage on KGMB, K5, and of course those HNN digital platforms. And then watch Hawaii News Now at 9 all the way until 10:30 on KGMB, KHNL, and K5. And don't forget, we've made it super easy to find late-breaking updates throughout the day on those digital platforms. Just hit the Election 2022 tab on our homepage, our smartphone app, or our streaming app. Don't have the app? Today would be the day to download it. A lot of developments to come, and we'll be watching it all.
Hong Kong is easing some of its COVID rules regarding tourist groups. Tour groups will once again be allowed to visit theme parks and museums, but international travelers are still subject to multiple COVID tests and are barred from visiting bars and restaurants during their first 3 days in Hong Kong. Apple supplier Foxconn is now recruiting for one of its plants in China after weeks of lockdowns and decreased production. China's harsh zero COVID policy is taking a bite out of tech giant Apple, which says production of its latest iPhones will be temporarily affected. Selena Wang has the latest.
Apple supplier Foxconn has started recruiting workers for its Zhengzhou factory. This facility, located in central China, is Apple's biggest iPhone assembly factory, and now it desperately needs more workers. After a COVID outbreak at Zhengzhou in mid-October, there has been chaos at the factory. Viral videos have shown masses of workers walking miles across highways, trying to flee the factory's COVID restrictions. Workers had complained about subpar living conditions and the poor quality of food. All of this has put huge strain on Apple right before the key holiday shopping season. Apple says that its key factory is operating at significantly reduced capacity, and this means that shipments of its newest products are temporarily impacted and delayed. Foxconn said it is going to offer a one-time bonus equivalent to $69 for workers who left and choose to return. It says new workers will get an hourly wage equivalent to $4. Now, the factory is operating in a closed-loop system, which means that workers have to live and work on site. This is a COVID restriction. Apple is just the latest victim of China's zero COVID policy. The country is stuck in this endless cycle of lockdowns, mass quarantines, and mass testing. It is taking a huge toll on the country's economy and people's lives. It means that China is more and more isolated from the rest of the world, and it's also a much less attractive place for foreign business.
Back out here live in the H&N Digital Center, we have a busy afternoon ahead of us. Dylan's going to be out in the newsroom talking to our entire newsroom staff about what they're up to, because it's all about the race. Well, part of it's about the race for this Capitol Hill. There's a lot of local elections unfolding as well. Of course, we got the race for governor. We have that really heated race on Maui. A number of other races will be following very closely here, Dylan. And look at that sunset on Capitol Hill.
Beautiful.
Looking gorgeous. And again, polls closing in less than 45 minutes for 2 states. And so we should be getting some action coming up. Remember, we're going to continue to live stream here at H&N all the way to 4 p.m. on your H&N digital platforms. But for now, let's turn it over to Guy Hoggy with a quick check of your weather.
So we've got these breezy winds. They're here today. They slow down just a notch tomorrow and hold firm all the way into Saturday. And then on Sunday, that's when they're going to start to downshift. Notice the yellow streamlets kind of just back off. So we've got a nice long run of trade wind weather. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous. Now today we'll have a few more showers for those windward and Malka neighbors from time to time, pretty much throughout the day, but still lots of sunshine. And then drier conditions going to take over from Wednesday through Saturday with those breezy winds, and then those slower winds take over on Sunday.
Oh, what's the internet talking about today?
What are they not talking about today, Jonathan?
Well, the election for one. The other big story, got everyone talking, Powerball. Yep.
Yes, Powerball.
Yes, and I'm so sorry we didn't win. No,
my goodness,
no.
look at that total.
I know.
$billion?
Billion.
That is insane.
Billion. And get this, someone bought the winning Powerball ticket in Southern California, $2.4 billion, or $2.04 billion to be exact, was the top prize. We do know that it was purchased at a place called Joe's Service Center in Altadena, California. It's outside of Los Angeles on the northeast side, I'm told. The jackpot was by far the largest lotto prize ever won, topping the previous record of $1.5 billion. That was back in 2016. And then, get this, only 4 previous jackpots have topped $1 billion, but none of those are even close to that current prize, which only started at, $20 million way back on August 6th, and it took over 3 months of no wins to grow to this massive, massive amount.
Wow.
So, yeah, no one has
Real
won.
quick, Jonathan, what would you do with that much money?
Travel, 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 and I wouldn't have to rely on my thrifty unraveling your travel tricks either.
You
I
can
would
still
go,
do it.
I
Every
would
penny
go,
counts.
Yeah, I would be a thrifty billionaire, I think, and I couldn't imagine not working. I said that yesterday, and it's true. Like, I would be one of those just bored million. You?
Right off the bat, multi-million-dollar houses for all my ohana, my family.
Oh, myself included. Thank you. Yes.
I'd also probably buy all the property on Kauai from Zuckerberg and then give it to Native Hawaiian families, something like that.
You.
Let's see what else we got here.
You can buy a lot of this.
Yes, a lot of spam. With inflation up, more people are turning to canned meat, spam to be exact. And when we say more people, we obviously mean people not here in Hawaii, because that is a part of our regular diet. Spam sales are up 36% nationwide, and that's leading to more spam recipes like spam French fries, cheesy kimchi dipping sauce, spam jam 3.0 sandwich. Just a lot of delicious ono stuff. I had some spam the other night. Musubis last about a day in my possession, and then it's all gone. I can make like 10 with 1 can.
Is that your favorite way to go on spam?
Yeah.
Mine's fried rice all the way.
Oh yeah, that's good too. Yeah.
Well, I saw an awesome recipe on TikTok of someone doing deep fried spam with an egg in the middle.
Ooh, yes.
It looked pretty good. All right, moving on. I'm hungry, and we got a long way to go, Dylan.
We sure do.
Yes.
It's going to be a long night.
Good news now. Let's talk about some viral videos of a really heroic youngster and a warning about licking frogs. Here's Jeremy Roth.
A Wisconsin woman who suffered an incapacitating seizure says she's lucky to be alive, all thanks to the heroic actions of her 4-year-old son.
He's been a little super bad.
Kayla Moore says she suffered from chronic seizures for years, and when she felt a recent one coming on, she dialed 911. But it was her 4-year-old son, Logan, who talked the dispatcher through the emergency.
My mommy's having an episode. She's shaking her legs and her head.
Okay. Is she able to talk to me on the phone?
No.
The little boy stayed on the phone until paramedics arrived to help his mom. Local officials later honored Logan's bravery with a certificate and medals. And from a cautionary tale with a pint-sized protector to a word of caution about frog licking. Yes, you heard that right. The National Park Service recently posted a PSA warning desert park visitors not to lick the Sonoran desert toad, a species that secretes a psychedelic toxin which some people ingest and even smoke to hallucinogenic effect. The NPS says this toxin is strong enough to kill an adult dog, and as for humans, one ill-advised lick can make you very, very sick. Finally, if you want to catch the last total lunar eclipse for some time, too late. You missed it. The election morning lunar light show began with the Earth's shadow shrouding the moon, then turning it a spectacular crimson color, hence the nickname, a blood moon. The next total lunar eclipse isn't set to occur until 2025. Sorry, Charlie. For Take a Look at This, I'm Jeremy Roth.
And we have some more local images of that eclipse to show you.
It was so beautiful.
Were you up
nice.
that late?
I was, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. I just couldn't sleep last night. Must have been because the moon was so bright and red.
Excited about the election night. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this is shot by our photographer, John Yasunaga.
Look at
this
that.
This is over at Eva Beach. Man,
stunning.
So Halloween, fall, autumnal colors there.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very nice.
All right. The stream continues for election 2022. Coming up in just about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to continue that on your H&N digital platforms. We're going to have a recap of all the latest election news and go state by state to all those battleground